like an e-commerce SaaS sort of transaction on the website where we sell a lot of our content. We have 3 different business units: Document Cloud, all the creative stuff, and then a MarTech stack as well. Some of that's sold through both channels. The MarTech stuff tends to be all through the field, and I'm focused on all things global, those 3 business units, but specifically where we deal with organizations. I'll talk a little bit about digital experiences and what they mean. I was doing BI back at Dell before there was really digital, not quite before email, although I can remember that, and before the internet. But certainly before there was a real digital marketing experience. It was about a little bit of a website, and there was some email stuff, but BI then was thinking about the sales teams and pipeline, and marketing was more field-type marketing and enabling sales and those sorts of things. Nowadays, you all know that digital experiences are transforming us as consumers, but I would propose to you, if you haven't already figured this out, it's also transforming us as business buyers as well. And so, you can see through the research, I've seen through my own personal experiences, people have multiple devices, they're transitioning from device to device. They're talking to their networks in social, both in Facebook as well as in LinkedIn, a traditionally B2C and B2B experience. For everything on, what pair of pants do you enjoy, what kind of sneaker, all the way up to what's the best analytics platform out there to use. We used to joke back when I was doing social at Social Insights at Dell, we used to joke, nobody talks about enterprise data center technology on social, and it turns out they do back then. This was 10, 12 years ago. We're actually getting people in Twitter, back and forth with each other, in LinkedIn, like, anybody have a recommendation? I've got a Unix to Linux migration. And tweeting about that. So, these worlds are meshing. And these great B2C experiences that are being created are conditioning us as consumers to expect the same thing in B2B. And so I'm going to talk about those experiences, and more importantly, I'm going to talk about how you can improve those experiences by focusing on the customer and bringing the insight about the customer into the decisions you make as a business in the sales, pre-sales, awareness, marketing, all the way through the post-sales transaction. And hopefully there's something in there that'll resonate with you. I'll also state that most of what I've done in my career has been pretty scrappy, even though I've worked with big brands. The first year I was at Adobe, I had absolutely no budget and had 3 people, and we're now 30 people and more budget than I know what to do with. I'll talk about some stories at Dell and some other places where it was just an analyst and a server, and we were mashing things together on spreadsheets. Back in the day when we were doing BI, everything we knew about all our B2B customers, the 7,000 accounts that mattered to us, I could fit on a spreadsheet. And we ran a $2 billion, $10 billion business off of that with our BI stuff, right? That was long before Tableaus and all those other things. You don't need these tools, they help. What you need is a carpenter that knows how to build a house, right? And a vision, and knows why you're doing what you're doing, and then all the tools make you more efficient doing that, but it's not a tool problem. These experiences are what really matter. I talk a lot about experiences creating relevance. A lot of us talk about personalization. Personalization is about creating relevance. And I'd argue to you that relevant interactions with your brand, whether they be B2C, online, offline, digital, analog, or with your human to human, human to technology, those interactions, those relevant interactions are what drive ROI. I spend a lot of time measuring the value of marketing and all the ROI questions. I tell folks that there's 2 things an analyst can do. They can count money or they can make money, and I'd rather spend my time making money and less time counting it. Counting is at table stakes. A lot of the conversations today has been about counting money. How do I track things? How do I know what's working and what's not? I challenge my teams to think about not what is that marketing effective, but ask the question rather from a customer perspective, for which audience is that effective? And then step back and say, is that audience big enough to be relevant and meaningful to me as a business, or is it too micro for me to even make any money off of it? So even when you're counting money, you can think about making money in different sets. But I'm going to talk completely differently about how you interpret behavioral signals to make better decisions when you interact with that customer. And that, in fact, drives real value. So I do the marketing effectiveness sort of work, too. We have 4 or 5 different attribution models and econometric modeling, and I've got teams counting a bunch of things. And I'm making decisions about how we invest money and where, what's working from a tactic perspective as well. But I've got a whole tranche of my team thinking about what do we know about customers and how can we do things differently through that sales motion, through that marketing motion? How do we get marketing and sales to work together to go do things that we've never done before. And I've done this in other businesses too. So again, I want to bring it back to what y'all can do when you go home. It's all about connecting the dots. I've been connecting the dots for years. Back when I was doing spreadsheets and it was 2 analysts and it took us a week every quarter to build that blue book we called, which is everything we knew about the account. All the cross-sell, upsell modeling, and I use modeling in a very loose term. It was business heuristics. We weren't doing algo anything back then. All the buy power sizing, all the buy power more heuristics, all the how many contacts do we have, all the what have they bought before. 15 years ago, we were unlocking what is this account bought across all the things we can sell. I know brands today that still have problems with that, big and small, even though they have all kinds of resources. But putting it together in a spreadsheet, it was all connecting the dots. Now, the biggest challenge my team is working on is I usually carry my phone, but I'll pick it up and say, I want to imagine I have a phone. I want to know where this device works. That's a connecting the dot challenge. Because you all buy or influence B2B transactions into your company. As a profession, what I'm trying to figure out is what your organization is interested in that I can sell to you, because that will create potentially a relevant conversation. Because if I can connect the dots cross device, and not only just you, but your organization as a whole, and I'll show some real data to suggest this is true based on my experience, when my marketing interacts with you, it's going to be relevant because you're in the market. When my sales team connects with you, it's going to be a relevant conversation because you're in the market. How do I know? Because I'm observing your behavior. It's the things B2C's been doing for years and B2B's trying to figure out. When we were at eBay, we had 57 million active customers in the US and 20 years of behavioral data we never threw away, 7 instances of Teradata, massive. And the 300 analysts with table level access to everything and building views just to run that business. But what we didn't have was a 360-degree view of the customer, and this was 5 years ago. So we built this 360-degree view of the customer, and then we started building uplift models off of it. Now, what does it mean? We were trying to predict you would buy something, but not in general, because I couldn't make money off of that. I was trying to predict if you would buy this particular pair of shoes if and only if, or conditional upon me sending you an email. And we built these uplift models, and we were refreshing them daily and running the business and figuring out how to create an automated, personalized experience. That's way off on the other end of the spectrum. But I bring you all the way back to 15 years ago, 10 years ago, when we were doing it on spreadsheets in a B2B sort of context. And I want to plant the seed with all of you that figure out how to become a customer intelligent organization at your company. Figure out how to use the data you already have at your fingertips, connect it together, and then figure out how to democratize that customer data to everyone who interacts with the customer. I'll bring some stories to light about the power that is. You all can do that today. You don't need to go buy data. You don't need to go buy tools. You probably need someone who understands SQL and someone who can do VLOOKUPs and someone who can think about deterministic and probabilistic matching. It's not a hard skill set. And then you got to figure out a way to deploy it to folks, and the easiest example is you put it on a spreadsheet or Google Docs or whatever you're using today. And you can get more sophisticated from there. Research suggests that companies who get this right, companies who think about customer behavioral data, not you look like someone who will buy, right? If you're in B2B, we call that firmographic, technographic. You're in the right industry, you have enough revenue, blah, blah, you start to look like someone who will buy. In B2C, it's you right zip code, which means you probably make enough money and you can afford to, and you might have an affinity for what I sell. That's all lookalike modeling. I'm talking about observing behavioral data, which you all have in your systems as well. If you have a CRM system, you know who's interacting with your content. If you have web analytics, you know who's interacting with your online experience. And if you have the ability to drill into individual, at Adobe with Adobe Analytics, it's marketing customer IDs. At other tool sets, it's something else. But it's a unique identifier that says this customer, whom I know in my CRM system, is on my website right now and they're looking at something. It's interpreting that behavior. Or this customer just talked to sales and they said some things and I've got some information I can interpret. When you do that right, you're going to grow faster than your peers. You're going to be more profitable. This is a fascinating case study of the same thing, but this was an HR leader at Virgin Media. And there's a link. I can send a link if anybody wants to read the LinkedIn story. I found this fascinating. Essentially, he came in and he said, let me look at the hiring process. People you hire or don't hire are also folks that might influence a sale you try to make in the future, whether you're B2C or B2B. It's an interesting way of thinking about customers, right? He was looking at the recruiting process, and then they had a lot of survey data, people that got hired, didn't get hired, and about the experience, and they were finding that it was not a great experience, the hiring process. Well, he started to connect the dots to the actual B2C sort of selling of services to these same consumers, and he finds out that a lot of those folks that got turned down for jobs and had a bad experience also canceled their subscription. And when you monetize it out just for that first order effect, it's $5 or $6 million. So now he has a business case to think about. We need to improve our recruiting process because it's costing us $5 to $6 million a year. And that's without the network effect of them telling their friends and word of mouth. So think about the experiences you create for your customers in all of those interactions. Oh, by the way, potential customers are the same people that you might hire or not hire. They may go to another brand. If you sell in the B2B space, they may go to another brand and influence a future sale that you try to sell into that organization, right? A great example at Dell that I ran into many years ago, and we could have solved this problem. So here's another great example. We had a university laptop program where we sold students laptops, typical. We had a warranty issue with one of those laptops. Didn't go right. Customer was upset. Customer went home, the student went home to their family and talked about it over a break. Turns out that one of the parents was a C-suite executive at a very big account, and we had a multi-million-dollar deal. It was Boeing. Had a multi-million-dollar deal going into that account. That went sideways because of that one interaction. I knew and could have known and could have shown, but I couldn't get the business to connect the dots, that when that customer called in, we should have been able to tell the support rep, this is an important customer, even if we told them nothing else. Do whatever it takes to solve their problem. Ship them a new laptop. Would have changed that whole dynamic. At least we should have told the sales team, someone, a very important person, household in your account, had a problem with another part of our business. You should be aware of that. So when they went in on Monday morning to talk about the deal, at least they knew what was going on. Hey, oh, by the way, here's a customer support rep that had the conversation. You want to know a little more? Call them. Start thinking about your customer a little differently. These things aren't hard today. They can be very impactful. It's all, and it's everyone's job. I deal in marketing, but it's not just marketing. It's everybody who touches the customer. It's all the people who create content. It's all the people that create the web experience. It's the folks that deliver that content through marketing. It's the sales folks and the conversations they have. It's post-sales and customer support, customer success. Every one of those are created. It's the HR team. It's the folks that are hiring and firing folks or bringing people into your organization or for whatever reason letting them go. Those are all branded experiences that can have an impact, and you should be aware of the interactions you're having with a customer. I'm going to pivot a little bit and get really deep into what I'm doing today. So I'm in the B2B space. There's a lot of talk around account-based marketing. At Adobe, we like to talk about account-based experiences. One, because it's on brand. If any of you watch our brand, it's all about creating experiences, but also because it really resonated to us. I actually found a New York Times article that turned us onto this concept. It's more than account-based marketing. We always felt that. It never resonated. Sales team's there too when you sell B2B, but it's also customer support and everything. So this ABX concept is A plus B plus C plus D plus E. It's all the interactions. That's what this slide is meant to show. I'm talking about customer behavior and connecting the dots. Here's what my team's doing today. So we're looking at 3 different insights about an organization. We're actually buying data because we can, but I now know through my experience we didn't have to. We could have started with the data we have in-house. But we buy data around, and some of the brand names you might see, but, we buy data. We also do our own modeling, but it's the look-alike modeling. It's like you look like someone. That's B2C, B2B sort of traditional. You could do that on spreadsheets. Back in the day, we were doing on the spreadsheets at Dell, we were looking at, okay, so it looks like we tend to acquire with desktops first, then we go into the, then it's notebooks, then eventually we get into the data center, so that's the cross-sell model, and we can say that we spend, we sell really well and win more often than not in this industry or that industry, so now when I start to look at where the profit pools are, I'm looking for those industries and what have you bought in the past, and it's really simple stuff. You guys can do that today on spreadsheets, or you can have a host of folks, and if those of you who have heard about Adobe Sensei, we've got a team that's working on artificial intelligence and machine learning. Those are the same folks that build my models. I'm lucky I get to leverage that brain trust to solve my own internal problems. It's also a circular sort of experience. Some of the problems we work on actually make their way back into the product. I'm pretty proud of that. But I've got some real PhD scientists working on those models, but they're just lookalike models. They're really, really good, but they're just lookalike models. We use firmographic and technographic information. So industry, employee size, revenue, that's the firmographic stuff, as well as you can buy data around install base. Do they have this technology in their environment? Do they have that technology in their environment? It's helpful for us to do that. Then we go to third-party buying signals. So those of you that don't know, there are companies out there that sell this information, and they harvest it through interactions on other websites. Bombora, D&B, there's all kinds of folks that do this. What they do is they follow each and every one of you because you've got a cookie on your device or you filled out a form, and you go to CMO.com, you go to New York Times, you go to some thought leadership portal that's not really trying to sell you anything, but it has content that you're consuming. And they're interpreting the consumption of that content into topics. And then they aggregate it at the organizational level. They know that you're from the organization either because you filled out a form, you have a cookie, or more likely because you're coming in, you're doing it at work, and they're looking at your IP addresses in your firewall, and they know that that's Adobe. When I'm at work and I'm doing this at Adobe, anybody who's doing this with my device knows that I'm doing it from Adobe, and they can aggregate all those signals at the company level. And then they sell this data to other brands, and they say, hey, Adobe's interested in an email platform. Adobe's interested in personalization, and you buy that data feed. And then you can start to say, okay, now I know you look like someone who could buy something, and you're demonstrating intent as an organization that you're in the market for something. So the general analogy I make here is if I was selling cars, I would say zip code, income level, some male, female, demographic stuff, and I get to, these people are most likely to buy, cars that in the market I sell. And then I'm the salesman on the lot, and I see you enter the lot and start to look at the cars, and now I know or I know that you're shopping, let me back up. I know that you're shopping on buying websites, and you're doing some brand comparisons. That's the intent data. This is the data now I'm going to get into the data that's first party. So now what I'm doing is I'm looking at their interaction with me. That's the analogy of someone coming on the car lot and looking at my cars. And if I'm a salesperson and watching that behavior, I can say, okay, I know you're in the market, I know you can afford it, and now you're looking at my brands, I know exactly what to talk to you about. That's all we're doing at scale here, and you all can do this in your organization at some level. The first party data about what I'm plant seed is the most relevant of everything. I don't even need this data. I've proved it internally. I don't need this data anymore. Because this behavioral signal right here, which is, what is that organization doing? How are they interacting with my email? What are they doing on my website? What are they looking at? Not just that they're on my website, but what are they looking at? Business topic, use case, or products, because I'm interpreting the behavior into something conversation I can be relevant about because I know they're in the market for something. That data alone is enough for me to make money off of. It's enough for me to lead score off of. It's enough for me to do. When I was at eBay, this same first-party data was better than Facebook's data on their merch algo. Proved it through a clean room test with Facebook. 4 times better at predicting what you would buy. Meaning eBay's first-party data about their own customers was better than Facebook's data about those same customers. Why? It's because the data you have about your customers interacting with you is relevant to you. It's contextual. And I would argue, whatever data you have, you know your customers better than anybody else, even Facebook, in the context of whatever it is you do and whatever your relationship is with those customers. But the question is, how do you bring all that data together, and how do you deploy it through your organization so sales and customer support and the marketing team and everybody can make smart decisions off of it? So that you're not trying to sell a company something when they're having a problem digesting the last thing you sold to them. How do you know it? Because the customer support team is telling you that they're having a problem with that deployment. I'm going to go off the deep end for a second and then bring it back. My team is actually going algorithmic and predictive with this data, and it's really cool. It's cool because I'm talking to big brands that are aspiring to go here, so I know it's not industry standard. What am I doing? We're looking at organizational behavior and predicting pipeline. What is pipeline? Pipeline is when sales goes into Salesforce system or whatever CRM system and says, I've got an opportunity at this account. My team is interpreting organizational behavior with just marketing and predicting 2/3 of the pipeline that sales is putting in their system before it happens. 6 to 10 weeks before it happens. That's creepy, kind of, but not in a bad way. It's creepy to the sales team. We're also predicting this behavior in the pipeline before the first form is filled out. Now, in my business, I may get 40,000, my biggest customer is $5 million deal. I may get 40, 50,000 visits to my website. I may get hundreds of forms filled out, all for that one opportunity in that organization. That's big, 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 big complex data. But even in the small space, in the smaller companies, the smaller sort of deals where we get fewer forms and such, that behavioral signal predicts the first form. Behavioral signal predicts pipeline being created by sales. I'm not saying we caused it. I'm saying I can now, but what can I do to it? I can serve it up to the sales team and say, hey, I think this account's ready to create pipeline. Now, maybe the sales team already knows it because they're kind of sandbagging and they haven't put it in the system, or maybe they don't. We tested this data, very small signal, very small bit of our bit. Some of my businesses are very small. I've got a $15, $20 million business. I got a marketing team that spends $20,000 a quarter. I've got another one that spends $50 million a quarter. And I've got to try to figure out how to solve all those problems. Works in large and small. One of my smaller businesses where they do a lot of outbound inside sort of prospecting on account list, outbound calling, we served up this behavioral data, said prioritize your list of accounts, a list of contacts, whatever, based on behavioral signal first. Some behavioral signal will start there, then everything else. That simple behavioral signal, you were on my website and looking at something that I was going to outbound call on, created a 4x lift in their prospecting. It doesn't have to be complex. I've done that in 2 other brands, by the way, and I did it 10 years ago at Dell, back before we were and that was before you could buy all this data. We paid some folks to go into Whois. If those of you don't know, you can look up IP addresses on Whois. And IP addresses are static at companies because IT's lazy, and so they don't change firewalls, and that means that once I know your IP address is your company, I always know your IP address is your company. Once I map that to my sales system, the way I align counts to sales, I don't know which account that is. We were interpreting behavior on the website. We were looking at URL traffic, and the URLs were descriptive, so I know this was a storage page, this was a desktop page, et cetera. Real simple, but built it all from scratch, and we're making 4, 5, 8x return on prospecting. We just call them formless leads. We just sent it to the sales team, figured out how to send it to them. It actually turned out to be a spreadsheet we emailed to the sales managers every week because that's how they wanted to consume it. Fine. We're actually doing that at Adobe as well, but we did something more sophisticated here. Thank you. What is an MQA? I'm not going to go into that too much other than it's just looking at signals. But these are the kinds of things we're looking at that we're predicting off of. Or build a heuristic and say, when I see a bunch of behavior across the organization, I think that's important. We should be doing something different. It doesn't have to be as predictive. It is predictive. That's a graph that shows that 10 accounts in aggregate, consumption of product-based data, solution-based data, use case data, win sales, gets the first form, and number of weeks. And you can just start to, this was an early slide a year and a half ago, and we went, oh, there it is. That's the signal we're looking at. That's just graphing some stuff on a paper to prove to yourself that there's something there. And when accounts start to do, it doesn't mean 0 to 1, it doesn't mean 0 to 100, it could be 100 to 1,000 if you're big accounts, but it's unusual behavior. Why would a company start to interact with you more than they have in the past unless they're trying to learn, understand, or do something, right? And so you're just asking, what does that mean? This is where I wanted to get to. So at Adobe, the creative way to get this to sales was to use our own email platform. We sell Adobe Campaign, but it could be any email platform. And instead of sending emails to customers, my team is thinking about sending emails to my customer, which is sales. So we built out an automated process that looks at our analytics portfolio and says, what are they consuming on the website? We're interpreting that behavior, and we're pushing that email to the sales team and saying, this account, and in the US, where we don't have issues like GDPR in Europe and otherwise, this particular persona or person, because you're cookied, we have a form, you've told us who you are, is consuming this content. It might be interesting to you, and we're pushing it to the sales team. And now we're working on time of day of week, and we're considering this email program, the sales being our customer, The conversion metric means pipeline created, and I manage it just like any other email marketer might manage. I'm trying to optimize that experience for a mobile optimized in the field Salesforce, more of a desktop version, playing with open rates, looking at opt-out rates, making sure we don't get sales team to opt out. I want to be relevant, and driving that conversion and doing really, really good things with this. Yeah, question?
I'm curious, if you're sending automated emails, if you are sending them on the account activity basis or on the lead, the individual lead basis?
At the account, independent of leads.
Okay, so if you are looking at the accounts, you're saying Coca-Cola has different leads, are you saying Coca-Cola has Lizzie and Ashley and...
Both, and before and after they have leads. We may not even have a lead yet, but I've got behavior that says they're in the market. I don't want to wait for the lead, right? I've got data and 2 years of experience here with our data to suggest that behavior spikes 6 to 10 weeks before the first form is filled out. Do I want to wait to engage sales till the first form because I'm worried about credit? Or do I want to figure out a formless lead flow that I can get to the sales team? Created by marketing, I would argue, because if I didn't have that marketing content out there, I couldn't see customers interacting with it, I couldn't interpret the behavior, and I couldn't tell sales anything. So changing the way we're thinking about marketing effectiveness, if you will, right? What's the purpose of marketing? I think of it, marketing is around observing customers. The website's around observing behavior. That's a real value. Above and beyond whatever we get from a form flow funnel sort of thing, that's valuable too. And so yeah, it's all of the above. But again, we're not just thinking about leads. If I have a lead, great. If I have a person, the individual, I'm blanked out some names here, but the individual visitor name, George Sadler, because I know him. LinkedIn, we'll actually put the LinkedIn profile so the sales team can click on it, and they don't go to the landing page that has the profile because that could potentially be a bad experience. It goes to a curated search response in LinkedIn that says, here's the search result that shows that person, then sales can decide whether they want to click through or whatnot, or I know that person. But it's about not being creepy, it's about being relevant. We find that even, oh, by the way, this organizational behavioral analytics stuff is okay even in Europe. The European customer's okay with that, right? They're okay with, I ask each one of you, if you had a sales experience with, I get them all the time, cold calls, bad emails, what if I could change the game and say, you know what it is? I don't know what it is, but every time I interact with that salesperson, they're always on point with whatever's top of mind. Do I really care? Probably not. If I told you how I did it after the fact, you'd probably think it was kind of cool versus creepy. I would suspect that the majority would. I'm not looking at individual behavior mostly. Most of the signals at the organizational, that's the other thing I want to leave you with. Each one of you doing something in an organization, we all deal with buying committees, they're 8 to 12, each one has an organization. The people that make decisions have people working for them. Lots of folks are doing the research. If you look through the world through a straw and you say, just this one person, what's going on with them, you miss the forest, which is the whole organization is showing behavior that's interesting. So even if I just expose that, it's going to work. Closing statement. I've been doing this for a long time, I've connected dots. Some of my history's here. What I want to say is that, I started in the Marine Corps way back when, big organization, but we were a team of 30 doing something entirely new. None of the green gear worked. So we went and bought stuff out of catalogs and Radio Shack and figured out how to jump it and swim with it and make it work in the field. That's evolved into a whole new business model. At Dell, a couple of experiences early on. This picture up here in the right-hand corner, that was our customer data integration system back in the late 2000s. And David Schoenert, who wrote the algorithm, the probabilistic algorithm, to say we got an order management system that's creating orders below the account level. We got an account system and matching it all together, and then bringing in DMB's world base and trying to make sense of it all. That was all done on that and him. And that little tape box on top was a tape backup from Fry's we bought to make sure the whole system didn't. That was a $10 billion business. We were running off that. Did it again at Dell when we bought Quest Software, and we brought 5 businesses together, or hired an external executive to build out Dell Software, the Dell Software Group, and we were running 5 order management systems, 6 different Salesforce systems, integrated on someone else's server underneath the desktop, and running the business off of that in 30 days. That's a large company figuring out. I know that smaller companies can move faster than that, and it took a couple of people who knows what they're doing to go figure it out, right? It's not right. Even though I come from a big brand experience, I've always started the problem in a very scrappy way, and I just want to plant seed with y'all that everything I've talked about today may seem a little far-fetched, but if you can step back and think about how do we become a customer-intelligent organization given the data we have? How do I connect those dots with the people and tech I have? And how do I get them in front of the people that are making decisions about how to interact with my customers today? I might create some real value out there that's way beyond counting money, where most of your analytics teams are probably hunting today. So that's the end of the prepared. I don't know if we have a minute or two. We had a couple of questions.
We have time for just one question, if anyone would like. All right, well, let's give a big round of applause then.
Thanks, man.
So your next session is going to be the keynotes back down in the ballroom. So it starts in 10 minutes. So feel free to take some time, make your way on down there. And that will be the end of the sessions for today. If you do have any questions, I'm sure you can come up and ask them for a little bit. But 10 minutes, the next keynotes will start.